say to some of my colleagues who've been around a long, how long we've been fighting pharma, how long we've been taking on these interests. From the time I got to the Senate 720 years ago. I'm serious. Think about it. Let's be honest. Passing this law wasn't easy. I proposed it as soon as I got here, basically. And I've said that day that I was determined to work with Republicans. And I've done that on historic laws like the infrastructure law. Republicans came across the aisle and they've worked with us. And we got it done. Over $1.2 billion to reshape this nation's infrastructure. The CHIPS and Science Act and the PACT Act for veterans and their families. In fact, I think it's fair to say we've achieved more bipartisan agreement in these nearly 2 years in my presidency than anyone thought was even remotely possible when I entered office. So I thank the Republicans who stood up. And I'm proud of it. It's been good for the country. But I believe Republicans could have and should have joined us on this bill as well. After all, this bill cut costs for families, help reduce inflation at the kitchen table, because that's what they look at, how much of their monthly bills and how much do they have to pay out for their necessities. And it gave them just a little more breathing room, as my dad would say. This bill will lower the deficit. This bill alone is going to lower the deficit by $300 billion over the next decade, because it's going to pay less for prescription drugs. And that's on top of the $350 billion we reduced the deficit my first year, $350 billion reduction. And for this fiscal year, $1.5 trillion reduction in the deficit. So I don't want to hear it anymore about big spending Democrats. We spend, but we pay. Ladies and gentlemen, the last guy had this job, well, let me put it this way. This bill finally delivers on a promise that I've made to the American people for decades. But Republicans choose not to join us. In the end, every single Republican voted against this historic law. So it fell to the Democrats to meet this moment and deliver for the American people. And that's exactly what we did.